everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting and acquisition communities and our industry partners connect, talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I'm your host, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, my colleague, my partner, and my dear friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing today?
I'm good, Will. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you. Great to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to once again open up the discussion and talk acquisition with our colleagues out here. But first, I have to do my little disclaimer, as you know.
All right.
Ready for it? Ready. All right. Our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although, as Will said, some of those might slip out. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. So over to you, Will.
All right.
What do you want to talk about today?
Oh, I think I got something that might stir the pot a little bit. Stir that pot. Okay, so LPTA, low price, technically acceptable contracting strategies.
What
are your thoughts?
Topics. I love that topic. So I hope that some of my colleagues that have worked with me over the last several years hear this podcast, because they're going to say, there goes Soraya. She's about to go off the deep end on LPTA. LPTA is a tool, low price, technically acceptable. It's amongst one of the many evaluation or acquisition strategy, procurement strategy techniques that's out there. And it's a perfectly acceptable tool. And it's a tool that should be in the toolkit of the contracting officer. However, I have always, because of the agencies that I worked in and the nature of the things that we bought, the services, I bought a lot of services, but I also bought some equipment and materials, and the sensitivity to how those things impact mission. I had a tendency to push back hard on the use of LPTA for some of our procurements. And unfortunately, there are many in the business that think, well, if you use LPTA, you don't get any protests because, it's low price, technically acceptable. You determine what's technically acceptable. And by the way, I'm going to tell you what I think technically acceptable means, and you'll love that. But you determine what's technically acceptable, and then you take the low bidder amongst those that were ranked technically acceptable. Boo, haha, nothing to protest because we did what we said we would do.
Right.
My problem with that, and the reason I'm not a fan of it, to do low price technically acceptable, you better be buying a commodity or a service from an industry that you are very familiar and comfortable with. Because what you are saying is that even the most minimally qualified product, because that's what technically acceptable means, it meets the standard, and it's not a standard up here, it's like a standard somewhere down here. I'm not going to say low, but like down here somewhere. It's not the best, okay? It's not the highest quality necessarily. That means that you will accept that, and then you'll accept the low bidder in that category. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a spoiled little girl. I don't know. But when I'm buying, I don't know, Kevlar vests for agents, the bullets that go in their guns, the guns that they're going to use, the uniforms that they're going to wear, or I'm buying the services that they need to capture data, get them data, write them reports, prepare information. I don't think I want just technically acceptable. I think I want a higher level of quality. I'm not going to say I want perfectly the very best, but I want something a little higher than minimally acceptable or just acceptable. And hence, I tend to be more of an advocate for the best value approach to looking at procurements. Where we do trade-off analyses and we look at what's the better value amongst the proposal, meaning you're willing to pay perhaps a slightly higher price to get better value. And you're not always just picking the highest rated technical proposal or the lowest price technical proposal. You're really looking and weighing what your options are.
Absolutely. Soraya, we're on the same page. LPTA is a 4-letter word to me. Okay. It's a 4-letter word. Okay. And here's why I say this. This is an analogy that I've often drawn. So just follow with me just a little bit. Okay. Have you ever gone to the dollar store and bought aluminum foil? Okay. I've done it. I've done it once, and I'll never do it again. Why is that? Because it's technically aluminum foil, but don't try to do anything with it. It is technically acceptable. Okay. It meets all of the checks of what aluminum foil is, except utility. Okay. So I think the whole dollar store should take the name off Dollar Tree, off the dollar store, and replace it with LPTA, because the whole concept of that store is those cheese puffs are orange, but they aren't quite Cheetos. Okay.
Okay, that's good. You just beat me on that argument.
Concept, literally the whole concept. Those chocolate cookies with the white filling, they're technically cookies, but they don't quite compare to Oreos. Okay.
No,
So when you
point.
when you think about LPTA, I really think about the construct that's at play. In most instances, when we have a bucket of value, we want industry to shove as much value in that bucket for the price that we are willing and capable of paying. Mm-hmm. LPTA actually just turns that on its head, that the value proposition is to pull value out to a level that the government says, yeah, that's good enough.
Good enough.
That's good enough. And I can't think of a thing that we'd want to buy that would just be, that the layman's terms for it would be good enough. Okay?
Well, so in fairness, I would say that maybe, when you're buying very standard commercial items or products where the industry, has that down pat. I don't know, pencils, pens. I don't know. I just think you're right. It's commercially available. Like I said, I'm not going to completely denigrate it. I mean,
okay.
you did a way better job than I do. I should have had you sitting at the table with me when I was arguing with people about this thing, because I love that Dollar Tree example. No offense to the Dollar Tree folks and the people.
No offense, right?
No offense to them, but it is about good enough. And what happens when we talk about good enough is you better know what good enough really means in that industry, in that commodity, or that service. What are you better know it and know what you're getting to be able to say, I'm willing to accept this level and then take the lower price of that. And the reason I push the best value is because I think about how I buy in my personal life. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not rich, okay? I'm not independent. Obviously, I'm not independently wealthy, right? But when I go to buy a cut of meat, I don't take the one that's a little brown and, it's probably perfectly safe. But they discounted it as a little brown, No, I'm going to go buy a good piece of meat, and I'm going to be willing to pay a slightly higher price to get that piece of meat. I might go to the butcher and pay a little bit of a premium because I want a particular cut of meat. And it's the same concept. And when I think about when we buy goods and services for the government, you have to think about what those goods and services are going to be used for, how they're used by the end user, what's the impact to them if they don't get that higher quality item. Right. What happens, right? And so that's why I tend to be more of a proponent for best value. And I think about, let's talk about the pandemic. When we went out to buy testing services.
Yep.
I don't want low bidder on
testing. That's the last thing you want, right?
That's the last thing you want. No offense to the low bidder. You might have a good product, but I'm not going to take that chance. I want to evaluate the quality of the product, your experience in dealing with it, how you're going to manage the effort, how you're going to quality control how you're going to test it, how you're going to quality control, how you're going to make sure you're delivering what we need. And that goes to that evaluation criteria, the importance of the evaluation criteria best value has to be done right to be successful.
Yes.
And that, I think LPTA was kind of born out of some people not really doing best value right. And I hear from industry, when I was CPO, I would hear from industry, and I still do, that a lot of folks say best value, but what they're really doing is LPTA. They go, oh, well, you know, all you guys are great, and I'm just going to take the one with the lowest price. And that's not what best value is.
So I understand, please, I understand the motivations of why best LPTA presented itself, it was created, and why it's used. I got it. Okay. That it's really just, look, it's an easier technical evaluation, and then we go right to second grade math. One number is less than or equal to another. I absolutely get it. But I just feel, especially when you think about the guiding principle of the FAR, which is the kind of the framework, none of those guiding principles say, and the cheapest price.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
All of them talk about delivering value to the customer, promoting competition, all of these things, having fairness, openness, and transparency, all of these things, and all of those can be unlocked in a best value scenario. And it feels like all of them could be pushed aside when you think about, we're just going to do, going to trick the government into determining that it's technically acceptable, and then we're just going to do second grade math.
Exactly. Well, and the thing about, best value is hard. It is. It's hard to do. You have to work at it to get it right. It is subjective. You have to justify why this proposal has higher quality and what are the salient features, right, that you are assessing value to. And you have to be careful that you're not assessing a value that's unrealistic or something that you can't use. And of course, you can be challenged, right? We all know that in best value, you're going to get protested, and you're going to get, potentially, you could get protested and challenged because it is somewhat of a subjective evaluation. But I don't know. I think the squeeze is worth the juice. I really do. In best value, I really do. And it depends what you're buying and who you're buying it for and how they're going to use it. So I really come from the school that I want to keep LPTA in the toolkit. I want to make sure that people understand how to use it, when to use it. And I think that there are instances out there where you can use it, but you got to do some homework. You have to have done really good market research. You better know the commodity or service that you're buying. You better know the industry that you're buying it from, and what are their standards, right? Because if the industry has standards, then you might be able to live with this LPTA if everybody's meeting these standards, right?
Oh, I really like that, Soraya, because what that does is it gives you a benchmark for acceptability. Okay.
Exactly.
I love it.
So that's where I land on LPT. But I will tell you, I never thought of LPTA as a 4-letter word because I just don't like to think about it. No. Because I would put it on my list: plan, test, work, right? LPTA. 4-letter words that for whatever reason people just get attached to it. And I can tell you, when I was chief procurement officer at THS, one of the first briefings I got it was a fairly sizable dollar procurement. They're briefing me. They're doing the advanced acquisition briefing before the act plan was coming in and all that good stuff, because I kind of required that. So the contracting officer's talking about it, and I said, well, what's your strategy? And they said, we're going to use LPTA. And of course, I held my face. I did poker face. I left LPTA. Okay. And then I said, why LPTA? And the answer I got, I lost my composure, because they said, to avoid protests. And I went through the roof. I probably scared the heck out of the poor CO, because I said, no, we don't pick a strategy to avoid a protest. We pick a strategy because it's the right thing to do for that particular commodity or service to meet the needs of your customer and the end user. To tell me you're not going to avoid a protest, sorry, back to the drawing board. I mean, I was just went ballistic on it, right? And that set the tone for me, right? Because I don't want people to use it for the wrong reasons. Find the right reason. You got to use the right tool in the toolkit, right? You have hammers, you have screwdrivers, you have wrenches. You don't use a wrench when you want to hammer a nail. Yeah. You can, but you're probably going to hurt yourself.
Absolutely.
Or hurt the project you're working on.
Yeah, I totally get it. And so I am going to soften you've convinced me a little bit to soften my stance on LPTAs. But why I am historically have been uh, been so draconian against them is that, in my opinion, we should never miss an opportunity to get better,
Yes.
to increase, to go after, to at least aspire, okay, and try to get additional quality or whatever additional value. We can you can pick the value, the flavor of value that would show up in a best value determination. But in an LPTA, you never even get the opportunity to do it. You just get to count the coins.
Okay? Exactly. But again, if there are standards in the industry, if you can specify those standards, and you know that companies generally meet those, they will meet those standards, or they can bring in those standards, then you start to get to a place where on certain commercial commodities and services, you can do that, where, life is not of the essence, the safety and health of the folks using the equipment. Those are the things that I take into consideration. But on best value, people can get themselves in trouble too. And I want to touch upon that a little bit, because I did some of the largest best values that I can remember that I did. And I won a few cases on trade-off analyses. I actually had to testify before the GAO on a couple of court cases, and we won. And it was on the strength of how we did that trade-off analysis. But what I have seen is that sometimes I'm going to say the we, because I still consider myself
collective we, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm never going to leave the government. Right?
It never goes away.
It never goes away, right? It's in our blood. But we rush to give value to things we can't even use. And I can tell how many times I pushed back sometimes on some of my program officials and go, well, wait a minute. Just because the vendor told you that they're offering you this value-added feature, why are you giving it credit? You're never going to take it. You're never even going to use it. You can't even apply it in your environment. It sounds good, brief, swell, but it ain't going to work here because you have to change your whole infrastructure, whatever the case may be. So I think, when we talk about best value, the government also has to be judicious in how they do that best value analysis. And they have to be realistic. And the most important thing is they have to tell industry what they're thinking about, right? What they're looking for. I always think of that word innovation, right? We use the word innovation in
evaluation. Around a lot.
In solicitations. Well, we want innovative proposals. And then so industry goes, okay, I'm just going to throw innovation. I'll flip this thing on its head, whatever. And then all of a sudden we can't take advantage of it, but we give them credit for it.
Right.
We go, yeah, this proposal, has all this, but it has all this value, but I can't take advantage of it. Well, if you can't take advantage of it, why are you going to pay more for it?
Yeah.
Think about it, right? So I think we have to do a better job of crafting those solicitations to say, what are we thinking about? What are we looking for? What do we mean when we say, bring me your innovative proposals? And I will tell you, I am a huge advocate of telling vendors the target range for their pricing.
Oh, I love it. Oh, you speaking my language. You speaking my language.
I think you go, if you're below this number, big dating game kiss. And if you're above this number, can't afford you. I think that's a fair thing, because that starts to give industry a gauge, and companies will self-select themselves out. They'll go, hey, they can't afford me. Or, you know what? I probably don't want to play in this game.
Absolutely.
And that's fair.
And that's fair, and that's fine. Okay, we do this, and what I often say, Soraya, is we do this all the time in our private lives. We don't go out and just start going shopping. We identify the price envelope, if you will, of what the solution can live in, and then we go shopping in that envelope.
Exactly.
It's surprising that in government, it's almost heresy to suggest that there is a range of pricing that you could offer to contractors to help them build solutions that are actually affordable, that you actually get paid. Okay.
The affordability. I mean, and I know that it's been used, people have done it, but you almost have to fight to get it done. I've done it before in solicitations and been able to, but you almost have to fight with people to do that, because people are kind of resistant. And I'm like, no, this is a good thing. Industry welcomes this, by the way. Industry
absolutely.
Tell me what the heck you can afford, then I know whether or not I can play in this arena, right? The other thing is that minimum requirement. When we go buy in our personal lives, you touched it, right? I buy value, right? I decide what the minimum requirements. I don't care if I'm buying a vacuum cleaner, a computer, or I'm buying a new house. There's minimum requirements that I have. I want a single family home. I want it on a 1 acre lot or a half acre lot. It has to have a garage, it has to have this, has to, right? You have these minimum requirements. Now, when you go shopping, you go, and my price range is blah. Now you're starting to see what other features you might be able to get into that little price range.
The trade-offs.
Right? The trade-offs. Thank you very much. If people just thought of it that way a little bit more and applied realistic, I sometimes, think this isn't play money. Remember when people used to say, there was a saying about government money. It's only government money or something like that. Yeah. And I used to get really upset about that because it's not. It's my money. I'm a taxpayer. Yeah. This is our money, and we should be buying using common sense rules.
Yeah.
The FAR doesn't say, forget all common sense, go do stupid stuff. I looked at it. I went back and I checked. It didn't say go do stupid stuff. It said use common sense. It really does tell you to use common sense. It talks about reasonable prices, not cheapest price.
Correct.
That word cheap is not in there. I don't know.
Nowhere to be found.
I didn't see it, right? I see lowest price, but I've not seen cheapest.
Yeah.
And there is a difference, right?
Competitive
and
pricing.
I've not seen, right.
Yeah.
And I see words like fair, reasonable, equitable. That's the language we use. This is language we should be using in our daily lives. It's common sense stuff.
It is.
So I don't know. I think, I would love to have in the Federal Acquisition Regulation a rule that says, if you have no common sense, get out. Go do something else.
That needs to be in the guiding principles.
Exactly. Go do something else. Part 1 of the FAR. No common sense.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Soraya, it's about that time.
Knew it.
Always our challenge is stopping. But I think we've hit this one pretty well. You've actually moved me a bit on my LPTA range. There's a little bit of window for its utility, but I love the idea of having industry standards, using industry standards in whatever area you think in that commercial area that you can tie that down, so it helps you identify what the level of acceptability is. I really like that strategy.
Exactly. So time for those nuggets. See, I took your place. The nugget time. I'm gonna let you shoot the nuggets out for your nugget. What's your nugget?
Okay, so my nugget. So LPTA, there is a time and purpose. I think very few times and very few purposes, but I do believe when you're thinking about it, use your market research to maximize your knowledge of the supply or service, hopefully supplies, because it's just, my mind can't even, I don't think my mind can even get there on services yet. But I think on products or goods, use enhanced market research, do as much research as you can to identify ahead of time what that acceptable level is, and then stick to your guns. Even though you might see very attractive pricing, stick to your guns on what is the acceptable level for your agency, for your mission. That's my nugget.
Very good. Well, I'm going to go a little bit broader on the nugget this time, because you hit the nail on the head when it comes to LPTA. But I'm going to go a little bit broader in the nugget and remind everyone we have tools in the toolkit. The contracting officer is given a set of tools. They're provided tools within the FAR. The FAR provides this framework of tools. You have to understand how those tools work, how to use those tools, and when to apply them. And you can't be afraid to say, yep, this tool is a little bit harder to work with, but it might yield the right answer. So you pick the tool according to what you're trying to buy, but use that entire arsenal. I always think of it as a toolkit. And I carry that toolkit with me everywhere I go. I look like a little worker, right? And then it pops out and there's little LPTAs and there's little best values and all kinds of, we have all kinds of strategy, whether you're buying commercial items, commercial services, etc. So understand what those tools are and use them wisely. And don't be afraid to pick a tool that maybe is a little bit more difficult and might require a little bit more thought, more critical thinking and work, because it may be worth it, especially given the mission and what you're buying and who you're buying it for. And I cannot emphasize that enough. Mission, who's the user, how are they using it, and what's the impact to them of what you're buying.
Love it. What a nugget. Okay, that covers so much stuff. That covers so much stuff. Great stuff, Soraya. Okay,
wonderful.
Another one in the books. Well done.
Thank you so much, Will. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And I'm glad I moved the needle on LPTA for you just a little bit. Because I wasn't really trying. I wasn't trying to move it because I was like with you.
I'm willing to be convinced. But thank you so very much. Amazing topic. Great topic. I think we left some good nuggets and we explored what needed to be explored. So thank you and can't wait to do it again next week.
All right. You take care of yourself.
All right. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.